Warning, Best of the Decade is all opinion-based. It is not law. So do your own research and form your own opinion. That being said, my choices are better than yours. You jive turkeys, debate your mothers.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to The Controversy. I'm Jeremy, and this is 2020 Division, where Elliott-Carter and I are going to take a look back at the past decade and come up with top 10 lists from a whole variety of different topics. So, for example, this particular episode is comic book movies. If you want to stay up to date with all of the episodes of this series, then you really should consider subscribing to The Controversy. Then just click the bell to enable notifications and cross your fingers that those notifications actually come through. Or you could just check back every couple days. That's fine too. And without further ado, let's go ahead and do this. It's a lot of title for a lot of movie, a lot of characters. There's a lot going on, but Zack Snyder, he really did swing for the fences with this one. And, you know, of all the criticisms and problems that I may have with this movie, the man can direct the shit out of an action sequence, and he really does bring panels to life in a way that few other filmmakers have been able to. It takes elements from The Dark Knight Returns and The Death of Superman and kind of just smashes it all together, and some of it works better than others, but I think the casting of the Justice League is pretty spot on, and for that alone, it's definitely earned a spot on my top 10. 2012 was a major year for comic book fans. This is the year that Marvel was able to test their mettle and see how this extended shared universe thing was actually going to work with the Avengers. And holy shit, it paid off in spades. I mean, this proved the concept that they could bring all of these different marquee stars into a film and give us something that was gratifying and cohesive and fun. And sure, by today's standards, it may seem a little bit quaint, but at the time, like, Joss Whedon was the nerd god among so many fans of this franchise, and it's easy to see why. He was able to give each character a little bit of shine throughout the movie, and it never felt like it was cramming in too many elements because so much character development had been done leading up to the film. So this was a big moment in film, and 2012 proved that the Marvel Cinematic Universe had serious staying power.
I'm kind of lonesome back here.
I mean, what's not to like about Deadpool? Like, Ryan Reynolds was born to play this role, and in fact, he lobbied super hard to get this movie made when that kind of concept short film got leaked, and it proved that, like, the audience was hungry for this character on the big screen. And you know, we did have X-Men Origins, which the less said about that, the better, but this was a true representation of the Merc with the Mouth and a character that everybody loved. He's so quotable, it's just funny and stuffed full of crude humor and pop culture references and DMX songs. I think Deadpool is just so much fun and so accessible to people, whether they're comic book fans or not. So yeah, Deadpool. Thor Ragnarok is the most metal movie that Marvel's ever made. That was a lot of alliteration, and it was not intentional. Like, Taika Waititi came into the fold and reinvented this character in a way that just really reinvigorated him. Like, I don't think the first two Thor movies are great, but I love the way that they took the character with this film, and his chemistry with the Hulk and fighting the Hulk is just so cool. And we see Hulk kind of coming into his own and developing a personality. I love the aesthetic of this movie. It feels like a late 1970s, early 80s heavy metal album cover or something. Like, it opens up with Thor fighting a fucking dragon. It closes down with him just raining lightning down on bad guys. So fun, so fun. And plus, like, Tessa Thompson Jeff Goldblum, all of the supporting cast in this movie is just killing it. Kate Blanchett as Hela, she's not sophisticated in a way that like your Michael B. Jordan was in Black Panther. She's playing a very arch villain, and she's hamming it up and having a blast doing it, and I couldn't help but have a blast watching it.
Finally.
Spider-Man is hands down my favorite superhero, and I love Sam Raimi's original film. 2 was good too, but just for me, seeing Spider-Man on screen for the first time was like a really big experience for me. But when I saw Tom Holland was taking over in Civil War and actually saw that performance, I'm like, this is the Peter Parker that I've always wanted to see on the big screen, even if I didn't realize it before. And Homecoming, what it does is it brings Peter Parker into the current era and keeps him relevant and changes just enough to kind of fit him into the MCU without changing who he is. And I felt like it did that so well. It just has a really fun tone and an appeal, I think, for younger audience members and older audience members alike. And man, Michael Keaton as the Vulture, what inspired casting. He's one of the most nuanced and compelling villains that we've seen in any superhero movie. And I'm just so glad they kept him around at the end so that hopefully we'll see him again in an upcoming movie. What I love about Civil War is how unconventional it is. It's like our protagonists and our antagonists are kind of both our main superheroes, and Baron Zemo is kind of working behind the scenes to destroy the Avengers from the inside out. A lot of people kind of sleep on Zemo because he's not what they think about when they think about villains, but he was one of the most effective villains that the MCU has had. You look at Tony's ideology and you look at Steve's ideology, and neither of them are really wrong. Neither of them are really right. You can see both sides of the conflict, and that's what makes it so devastating when they go to blows at the end of the movie. You don't want to see anything bad happen to either of them, and there's just such an emotional resonance to me in this film. I also think it's pretty fucking dope that they were able to introduce T'Challa and Peter, and neither of them feel like a cliff note or like they were shoehorned in. They both feel very vital and very important to the story. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that Black Panther is the true protagonist of this movie that has a full character arc within it. So, man, I just think that Civil War it's kind of Avengers 2.5. It brought together so many characters in a way that I felt was meaningful, and thematically, it was very rich.
I used to think that my life was a tragedy, but now I realize it's a comedy.
So The Joker is a relatively new movie. I haven't spent as much time with it as I have some of the others on this list, and in fact I've only seen it one time. But man, it had a profound effect on me when I watched it, and it's easy to tell why if you've seen it. It's just such an interesting and compelling character study about a man deteriorating from the inside out as the world around him has just kind of gone to shit. It's very nihilistic, it's very dark, but Joaquin Phoenix gives one of the greatest performances that I've seen in a movie. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but ever. Like, he is so good in it, and you're able to sympathize with the devil until you don't anymore. And I know it owes a lot to Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, but just on its own, Todd Phillips was able to do something that really struck a chord with audiences, and it's gone on to be a juggernaut in the box office, and I feel like it's going to have staying power simply because it is so different from what is going on outside of it in Marvel and in DC. So it's very singular, it's his own thing, and I really enjoyed it for that. I'm going to be honest with you guys and give you a little confession. I didn't love the first couple X-Men movies, and I was never really keen on Hugh Jackman as Logan. I had a very specific idea about what I thought that Wolverine should be, and I didn't feel like Bryan Singer maybe understood the character in the same way that I did. Not that my take is right, but it took a while for me to warm to Hugh Jackman. But this movie, it just was such a great payoff for this character that I was slow to warm up to, but by the time this movie came out, especially on the heels of the Wolverine, I had a reverence for him. I feel like James Mangold really brought some deeper understanding of the character of Wolverine and was able to really key in on the thing that I feel like has made him such a success with audiences ever since the beginning of the X-Men. But Logan was just the perfect send-off to this beloved and iconic character who, at that point, I'd built up quite an attachment to him, reluctantly. But the performance that he gives and the performance that Patrick Stewart give are powerful.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man?
You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Into the Spider-Verse may be the greatest Spider-Man movie ever filmed. And Spider-Man's my favorite superhero. And I wasn't sure about this Miles kid. Like, I had no prior connection to him, but man, what a profoundly moving and sweet and awesomely animated movie. Like, the message is so good. I don't care if you're a child or you're a 80-year-old person. It's just timeless, and it's so inspiring. And this idea that anyone could wear the mask and be a hero, I think it's just so positive. And I'm telling you, that What's Up Danger scene at the end just hit me so deep in my core. Like, I was feeling it, man. And the animation style, super cool and just unique and distinctive, and nothing else looks like that. It was this cool mix of 2D and cell shading and like comic book textures in the backgrounds. It's just super well done. I love the way that they introduce all these different Spider-Man characters and Spider-Gwen and my personal favorite, Spider-Noir. Like, Nicolas Cage nails it as that character. Just, man, what a fun movie. Peter B. Parker, it's so funny. It's so funny and heartwarming and cool, and I really just can't recommend this movie enough.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Here we are at the number 1 spot on my top favorite comic book movies from the last decade. And before you start typing, I know you kind of feel like I'm cheating for sticking Infinity War and Endgame in the number 1 spot, but come on, let's be honest here. They really are both half of the same whole. Like, everything that Marvel had done up to that point was being resolved with these 2 films. They were released within 6 months of each other. Thanos is the villain in both of them. You get my point. It's one story. I'm counting it as one movie. And what a fulfilling ending to this franchise it was. Like, what an awesome payoff where every one of these characters, big and small, get a moment of shine in these movies. And the pacing's really good because so much of the legwork and groundwork was laid all the way in these years leading up to it. And I just don't think that you could have done a better send-off to Iron Man and Steve. And it took 10 years of world building to get us here, and they pulled it off in such a satisfying way. Like, I don't know where you go from here. If Marvel just cashed out their chips now and walked away, which they never will, but if they did, it would be like a perfect franchise. Yeah, I know it had some lower points, but for the most part, they've all been incredibly enjoyable. And, while I'm here at the end, I think it's worth saying that there's something to be said about smaller budget, independent films, art films, things like that, but there's also something to be said about people across the world collectively enjoying this experience that we all had communally and we all had together. And that's the power of kind of tentpole filmmaking, is that it's a collective. Like, we all had this journey. It was a great time. Like, it was an event. Every time one of these movies came out, we'd go and see it in the theater. It was getting us out and something we could all share in together. And for that, I really do appreciate what Marvel was able to pull off. They dominated the past 10 years, and for good reason. But here we are at the end, and those are just my thoughts. Obviously, it's just one dude's opinion, but I would love to hear yours. So if you want to, make a video, feel free. We would love to check that out, or you could leave your list down in the comments section. I'm Jeremy, and on behalf of the Controversy, peace, love, and chicken grease.
Is this thing on? Yo, talk about a terrible list. Hashtag Jeremy's list was dookie. If you want to see a real list, please click my link below and I'll let you know how a real man does a list. Alright? Peace.